This is John Cola with OKRaw.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you. In this episode, I'm going to dispel another one of the raw food dogma, and I would call myths, that I learned when I was new into raw foods. Maybe some of you guys have heard this, maybe some of you guys have not, but some raw food teachers say that when you cook foods, you can only lose nutrients and lose things. You can never gain anything when you heat process foods. And you know, for a long time, I believed it. You know, I'm like, okay, when you cook stuff, it makes sense to me. When you cook stuff, you leach out nutrients in the boiling water, for example. And when you fry things, you can create toxins. You know, check my last video where I talk about toxins in most cooked foods, actually, that I don't encourage you guys to ingest. So I went along on my raw foods path, eating everything raw like I was supposed to be doing because I thought it was like the best. And you know, these days I'm not entirely in agreement with you know, restricting your diet so much to only eat specific kinds of foods, whether that is only fruit diet or maybe even only fruits and vegetables. My personal belief is that we should include a wider variety of foods, and by heat processing your foods, you guys can gain access to a greater diversity of foods, which then can benefit your body because of the different vitamins, minerals, and more importantly, phytonutrients, micronutrients, resistant starches, and different types of fiber that can feed your microbiome. And so, in addition, microbiome research was not around when I got into raw foods, and neither was the internet for that matter, since this is my 28th year now, starting on my raw food experiment that I've been on. And I'm going to tell you guys, you know, straight up that I consider myself somebody that eats a raw foods diet because I eat 75% or more. It's probably usually around 90% or more of my calories are from raw foods. I still eat plenty of raw foods, drink raw juices, you know, actually usually twice a day, usually have like about 96 ounces of fresh, usually vegetable juices a day. I also eat fresh fruit meals, make green smoothies, make fruit smoothies, eat fresh fruit, make salads, and raw soups as well. That being said, I do include some small amounts of heat processed foods just so I can get a diversity into my diet. One of the reasons for this is my recent microbiome test, linked down below, where you can see my hour-long microbiome results, and I encourage you guys to get a microbiome result test. You know, that kind of really told me that, hey man, although I was eating raw and high fruit and vegetable diet all these years, I was maybe missing some microbes in my gut that I personally want to be there. Maybe you guys don't care what bacteria is in your guts, as long as you feel healthy, you're great. And you know what? If that's what you feel, you know, go for it, dude. Do whatever you guys want. I'm just showing you guys on my channel, of course, my health journey and what I'm going through and what I'm learning to better my health. Because in the end, you know, to me, this is not about dogma. It's about my life, because I almost lost my life when I was younger, and that turned me to raw foods, which I thought was the healthiest way to eat. And as I'm learning, it is definitely one of the healthiest ways to eat, and actually most people, probably including you guys, need to include more fresh fruits and vegetables and more raw foods in your diet. That being said, for those of you guys that are hardcore raw, you know, this video may be or may not be for you, because I'm going to show you guys just what I've learned on my journey. So part of my journey also is that I really like to research things to make sure that I'm doing it the best way possible based on the most up-to-date science. So I like to think that I have a evidence-based, raw, plant-based diet. You know, and that's what I do. I mean, everybody has a different take on this stuff, and based on the research and what I've learned in my experiences, that's how I live my life. And that's what I want to share with you guys, because I look up published scientific studies a lot to see what the science is saying and see what all the amazing researchers that are actually doing the research in universities and colleges and doctors doing all this stuff, putting out the data so that I could, you know, learn and grow from it and then modify my life. I think it is quite sad that most people just see news headlines on some of the published study results, which sometimes even the news headlines get it wrong, and then basically a lot of people are misled. So I basically cut right to the documentation, go to the science, and read for myself, and then interpret it as I see fit. You know? And that's what I'm going to show you guys in this video. So this video, I'm going to dispel the fact that when you cook something, you're only losing things. And actually, a matter of fact, what I've learned is the exact opposite. And I started learning and seeing this like 10 years ago. And I always try to rationalize it in my head because like, oh, it can't be right. You always lose things because that's what I learned. And then at some certain point, I'm like, you know what? What I've learned was wrong. And at some point, you need to admit what you learned was wrong. And, you know, then you could say, that's all right. I wasn't perfect. The person I learned this from didn't have it right, and that's all right. But now I see the truth, and now I'm going to change and make changes on my diet, change it in my life that I believe can improve me more. And hey, if you guys are just going to stick to all raw, do it. And you know, I love to see your outcomes in the future. Another thing, you know, of course, I've looked into the blue zones, read the blue zone diet you know, book and all these things, and a lot of those long-lived cultures, you know, eat a percentage of heat-processed foods. I believe they should eat more raw foods, and I believe they could even live longer. You know, so that's what I'm going to share with you guys in this video. It's basically going to be me going over some of the science proving that actually when you heat process foods such as beans, carrots, and even some, you know, things like peas and other, you know, legumes, you can actually increase in nutrients. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So now I want to share with you guys some of the studies that I've found relating to nutrients in cooked and raw foods, as well as, more importantly, why it is important. All right, so this first study is entitled Carrot and Carotene and Multiple Health Outcomes, an umbrella review of the evidence. And basically, we'll jump down to the conclusion. Our study reveals that carrot or carotene intake could reduce the risk of various health outcomes. So this is just one of the many different micronutrients that they're looking at. There's beta carotene, alpha carotene, as well as other carotenoids and other polyphenols and nutrients in foods that can all reduce your risk of disease and better your health outcome and longevity, in my opinion, based on the science. You know, some people say, oh, I get enough by just eating raw carrots. Why do I need to cook them to get more or juice them to get more? You know, it is my personal belief, as well as some of the science, that, you know, if you have a certain levels of nutrients are definitely important to avoid deficiency, but then above those levels to a certain extent, because some nutrients, micronutrients, can be toxic in higher levels, then you're going to basically overcome potential enzyme deficiencies that you may have in your body, and your body could effectively heal. In addition, RDAs are based on the minimum required to prevent deficiency for like 97.5% of the population, and some people may need a little bit more than the RDA. So the next study is the effects of carrot juice, intervention on plasma, carotenoids, oxidative stress, and inflammation in overweight breast cancer survivors, and it says evidence suggests that higher plasma carotenoid concentrations are protective in relation to breast cancer reoccurrence. And so basically they fed women 2 different kinds of carrot juice from beta sweet or Bolero orange carrot. And the results were basically that by juicing carrots, they found that fresh carrot juice is a simple and effective approach to increasing plasma total carotenoids, and in turn reducing oxidative stress but not inflammatory markers in women previously treated for breast cancer. So nonetheless, you know, once again, they're just looking at carotenoids in carrots from carrot juice, which do get absorbed faster into your blood than eating the carrot raw, for example. So let's get into some of these studies where we're talking about raw versus cooked, all right? So first one we're going to go over is basically they go over the evaluation of physiochemical properties of carrots subjected to different cooking conditions. And then we're going to look at that here. So here's a table. And you can see here's the raw column, boiled, steamed, and then they did sous vide, which is another way of water cooking. And I just want to look at the numbers here. So like look at the raw on the alpha carotene. It's 23 on raw, but when you boil them, it's now up to 46. So like literally you've gained something. You've gained alpha carotene. When you steam them, even better than boiled, it goes up from 23 to 96. So now you could really get a lot more alpha carotene in there. Now, of course, sous vide cooking, not quite as good as steaming, and that's why, you know, I basically, if I do heat process vegetables, I do use the pressure cooker, and I usually steam them in the pressure cooker. You could go over the different kinds of, you know, carotenes in there, and you can see they're basically all increasing during the heat processing, basically to dispel the myth that when you cook things, you lose nutrients, all right? Of course, depending on what nutrient you're looking at and what cooking method you're looking at, this will go over, it may be higher or lower. So, I'm not saying always cooked food's going to be better. It depends on what nutrient and cooked foods you're looking at, all right? So let's close these two windows out. Next one is a biochemical characterization of cooking methods on main phytochemicals of red and purple potato tubers. So I encourage you guys to eat purple potatoes. Purple sweet potatoes. I just ate some purple ube, which is actually quite rare, for their anthocyanin content. So moving on, they're looking at the total chlorogenic acid, which is a type of polyphenol compound. And then you can see fresh, non-peeled, fresh, peeled. And this is like the numbers. It's like 81 and 83 versus peeled or non-peeled. And then when you boil it, look at that. The numbers go down. So you do lose something in here on the Musica variety. And then microwaved, it actually goes up. I'm not a big fan of microwave cooking, but in this case, the microwave cooking increased the chlorogenic acid or polyphenol content. But if we go down to the Magenta Love cultivar, right, these are different varieties of the potatoes. The Magenta Love already had a lot more of the chlorogenic acid than the Musica variety. And then it was 3,724, and when it's fresh peeled, it's 22,615. But look at that, when you boil it, it goes up to 8,000. That's over twice as much as the non-peeled or the fresh peeled. I generally heat process my food unpeeled because I don't want to I want to minimally heat process the food, not expose more of the surface area to the oxidation process. And then if we go down, this is even more interesting. Like, this to me is more important. The anthocyanins, I'm a big believer in the power of anthocyanins. I do believe they make a difference in your health, and most Americans simply do not eat any anthocyanins, which are basically what makes the food, purple. Like blueberries have lots of anthocyanins, purple carrots, things like red cabbage, and of course these purple potatoes, purple sweet potatoes, purple yams, as well as ube. And you can see here the anthocyanin content is really low in fresh non-peel, but when you even boil them, it goes up. And when you microwave them, this one goes up a lot. And even baked and fried, which I don't recommend because you're creating quite a lot of toxins, it can increase the anthocyanin content. So I want to stop here and why are some of the nutrients going up in these studies when you cook things? Because you're breaking down things, and things can only decrease when you cook things, is what some raw food teachers will lead you to believe. So the fact of the matter is, any way you basically disturb the cell wall of the produce, right, and you could blow it open, then you're going to expose more of the nutrients to being able to be digested properly. Now, yes, you could juice things, you could vacuum blend things to break them open, but those will not do the same thing to the cell walls or, as cooking does. So, everything is a little bit different, and that's what I'm learning, is that everything's so nuanced. So it's like these absolute statements like raw food cures everything. I would definitely not say that. There's so many nuances in health and nutrition. So here's another study: impact of cooking on phenolic composition and antioxidant potential in 4 varieties of basically beans. So let's go to this. And you can see effective boiling and pressure cooking on phenolic acid profile of different beans. And they got kidney beans, pinto beans, Bertolli beans, black beans, and soybeans. And you can see all the different, phenolic acid compounds. I don't even know all the different kinds, but in general, you're going to see trends. The raw is 18, but when you boil it, it goes up to 64. Boiled and drained is 30, but when you pressure cook it, it's 68. This is one of the reasons why I pressure cook things, especially the beans. You can reduce phytates more effectively, or lectins in the beans when you pressure cook them due to the process of heating. In addition, you can create more of the nutrients. Of course, if you're looking at pinto beans, right, and this is want to show you the variety. The raw has 56. When you pressure cook them, you only get 56, but when you boil them, you're getting 79. So, you could try to remember when I do pinto beans, I'm going to do boiled, but when I'm doing kidney, I'm pressure cooking. you could get too crazy on that stuff. And I just do pressure cooking because in general, pressure cooking is overall more favorable than, boiling. Plus, then you got to deal with the boiling water if you are boiling them. So yeah, so you're looking here. I mean, we just jumped down to black beans. I mean, black beans raw is 67, boiled is 44, boiled drained is 25, pressure cooked is 36, and pressure cooked and drained is 8. So John, it did go down, and right, I'm saying that things are so nuanced, guys. It's not always things always go down when you cook stuff. Yeah, in many cases it could go up. Depending on the specific food, it could go down. And that's why I believe, once again, that diversity of eating many different kinds of plant foods and heat processing them or processing them in different ways is most beneficial. So is juicing always better than vacuum blending? I'm going to say no. The best is to do all of them. Do juicing sometimes, do vacuum blending sometimes, do raw sometimes and chew with your mouth, do, pressure cooking sometimes. And each of those will give you different nutrients in that same food depending on how you process them, as well as different, fibers for our microbiome. So here's another study. I can't read most of it because it's in Korean, but this is a very cool study. Nutritional compositions and their retention rates of carrots by different cooking methods. And they go over different cooking methods, including boiling, pan roasting, stir frying, deep fat frying, and steaming. I don't recommend most of those cooking methods except for the steaming and boiling. So let's go into some of the study data. So I like that at least the tables are in actually English I could read. So actually this is the mineral content. So unlike a lot of those studies that, show beta carotene or, polyphenols and antioxidants, this is actually showing mineral content of raw, which is Ra1, which is the control. And you can see the calcium, for example, was 23 in the raw. In the boiling, it's 23.5. So yes, it did reduce. In the PR, which is pan roasting, it actually went up. In the PF, which is stir frying, also went up. In the DF, which is deep frying, it actually probably went up the most. I'm not giving you guys an excuse to deep fry your foods, although the mineral calcium content went up. You're creating lots of toxins and free radical things in there. And of course, ST steaming, it actually went up to 26 from 23. So once again, I do pressure steaming in the Instant Pot. You could look at the different, sodiums and iron and magnesium and all these selenium and zinc and all this copper. And you could see, it trends, depending on how you heat process, it goes down, goes up, goes up, goes up. It goes up, and so it depends. Once again, it's the food and the process you're using. I encourage you guys to use different processes with the same food. So, eating carrots always raw is not as good as eating carrots that you sometimes eat raw, sometimes juice them, sometimes vacuum blend, and then sometimes, pressure steam them, Here's another table they did, amino acids. So one of the common things is said that, when you cook foods, you denature proteins. So now all these proteins totally invaluable to you, and are you going to wither away and croak because you have denatured proteins? Surely, most people on a standard American diet eat a high percentage of cooked foods, and they still are getting their proteins. Bodybuilders eat a lot of, even some of the keto people or carnivores eat a lot of protein that are heated and burnt and nasty. They're still building muscle and stuff. I'm not going to say I'm going to do that. And I think that definitely eating too much meat is definitely not healthy as proven by science. But, here's looking at some of the different cooking methods as well as the different, amino acids. And I'm just going to go over to the total amino acid because, once again, every amino acid will act differently under the cooking process. Some could go up, some could go down. So once again, the raw line is at the top. And the total amino acid content is 581. When you boil, the total amino acid content went down to 580. The PR is pan roasting, went up. The next one is stir frying, went up. Deep frying, it actually even went up the most. So deep frying, you can have the most amino acids. Maybe that's because it's just damaging the stuff more. And then of course the steaming, from 581, the total amino acids went up to 714. You know, so isn't this quite interesting what you guys are seeing here, right? Not everything always goes down when you heat process things, okay? Moving on. Oh, this is an interesting one. Evolution of a human diet and microbiome-driven disease. So, you know, that's this published journal study. And what I want to talk about on this is focused on the microbiome. And once again, you know, the claim is that when you cook things, you know, you lose nutrients. You could never gain anything when you cook stuff. And like here it says, increased energy from cooking. And when you cook oats, right, you get a 12.1% increase in energy availability, and that's digestibility. And that's through the gelatinization and hydrolysis of the starch, right? Yes, of course, you could eat raw oats, but also you can heat process them and have a better digestibility. You know, same thing with wheat, plantain, and tubers, which all contain starch, resistant starch. Check out my resistant starch episode. Of course, egg protein and meats, you know, it also increases digestibility and increases weight gain. So yeah, maybe if you're trying to stay on the raw diet and you don't have enough, you know, calories and you're too skinny, maybe including some heat processed foods can increase the energy digestibility and energy availability. Let's not even talk about the starch and the resistant starch you guys are going to get that'll feed your microbiome due to the heat processing process, right? Last study we're going to go over today. Actually, this was an interesting one to me. And the title is Short-Term Dietary Intervention with Cooked but Not Raw Brassica Leafy Green Vegetables Increases Telomerase Activity in CD8 plus lymphocytes in a randomized human trial. Now, this is above my pay grade because I'm no doctor, but I'll just go over this one line. An increase in telomerase activity in CD8 plus cells of healthy volunteers could be regarded as beneficial in terms of helping with cell-mediated immune response. So to me, brassica vegetables are quite important to eat. They're one of the healthiest vegetables, leafy green vegetables you guys can eat, you know, and some raw food camps actually just avoid brassicas. They think they're toxic or whatever and all these things, and you just should eat baby lettuce. You know, I believe that you should eat brassicas, and in this instance, you know, this is a new study for me because I just found it when researching for this episode. I'm like, whoa. So now, once again, my theory of that, like every way you process a food can confer different benefits to you. So once again, my recommendations for you guys are juice things, right? That's going to process it one way. Vacuum blend things, chew it and eat it whole, right? And now, you know, pressure steam or boil or water cook the foods another way. So you could get, you know, so this is like going to improve your immune system. You know, and it was in cooked but not raw brassicas. Of course, more research and data is needed. But, you know, this is the method I am going down. And, of course, most of my diet still is raw. I believe in raw foods highly. But, you know, I am seeing some benefits from adding small amounts of heat processed foods into my raw diet. Now, if you guys are eating lots of cooked foods and expecting this video to justify your cooked food eating, I'm going to tell you guys need to eat more raw foods, right? Eat a lot more raw foods. For those of you guys who are eating a lot of cooked foods, you know, I'd recommend at least minimum 50% of the foods you guys should eat should be in their raw state. And the more, the better, you know, up to a point. And for those of you guys that are watching this, that are still eating all raw foods, you may want to consider, you know, gently heat processing your foods in select ways and including some of those if you are, you know, doing this for your health as well as the health of your microbiome. All right, so what did you guys think? I mean, is the science wrong? Did the science get it wrong, or did some raw food teachers that claim that when you cook things, you only lose nutrients? You know, that being said, I'm not going to tell you guys like, oh, cooked food is always better than raw food. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say that, you know, here's the thing. Nutrition is so nuanced, and it depends. What specific nutrient are you looking at? That nutrient in that food, in that cellular structure, wrapped around all the fiber, depending on how it's processed, heat processed, or otherwise, whether it's, you know, juiced, blended, vacuum blended, which a lot of you guys probably should be doing if you're not already. If you have a traditional Vitamix, you guys got to upgrade to a vacuum blender. Links down below for my videos on that, because that'll upgrade your health. Whether it is fried, stir-fried, microwave, boiled, pressure cooked, steamed, you could see from the data, right, every different nutrient and every different cooking method and every different food processed in a little bit different way will yield a different result. In some cases, processing carrots through, pressure cooking could be better than, deep frying, and in most cases, it actually always will be. But, so there are specific methods of cooking that can benefit you more, in my opinion, than others. And that's the topic of the video down below, where I talk about how to avoid cooked food toxins. I don't recommend heat processing or cooking your food in most ways. So the only methods of cooking your food I recommend at this point are with water. So whether you want to do a sous vide, whether you want to do a crock pot, whether you want to do a steaming, whether you want to do a boiling, or whether you want to do a pressure cooking, which is what I do, those are the only methods that I believe are the healthiest, and other methods can create and do create carcinogens, especially things like air frying, frying. It is debatable if microwaving is healthy or not. I mean, in the studies, it shows that some of the nutrients can be retained, but I'm concerned about the other effects that microwaving can have on your food, so I do not microwave my food, and actually my microwave is used as an ant-free storage area. Another point that I want to address is that I believe that people need to eat more raw foods, especially all people that are in America that eating a standard American diet. We need to get back to eating real foods that you prepare yourself. I buy beans and cook them myself. I make my own vegetable juices, and people are so lazy and they buy this grab and go stuff. When you guys are buying grab and go stuff, whether it's juices or canned beans, you don't know how those beans were processed, you don't know how the juice was made, you don't know how it was stored, what was added to it. So I encourage you guys to be a homemaker and take some time out of your week to prepare your own food and store it properly. And I like to store my foods under vacuum so that it stores, easily a week. And I could do like one day of food prep and then have food for the entire week and eat healthfully. And I believe that people need to eat more raw foods. I still eat a high percentage of raw foods. 90% of my calories I consume are in their raw, natural state. I include some heat processed foods, and here's another thing I'll share with you guys, right? One of the ways I consume my vegetables, a dominant way, is through juicing, right? As much as I showed the studies that some of the nutrients are increased during cooking, I did not compare it to juicing. So comparing raw to like blended, which lowers nutrients due to the oxidation of the high-speed blender and the bombarding of air, compared to vacuum blending, which there are very few studies on that, showing that you could have up to 3 times of certain polyphenol nutrients that are air sensitive and other vitamins during vacuum blending, or compared to juicing that basically blows open cell walls, right, at a low and slow speed, because I recommend slow juicing, so now we can have a greater uptake of them. So of course, the best ways to process food to blow open cell walls, which is why cooking is effective, is through juicing and vacuum blending. So most of my vegetables are processed in that way. To consume them, of course, I also will heat process things that need to be heat processed, like the beans, for example. And if you guys are buying like frozen vegetables, be aware they are all blanched before they are frozen, so technically they are heat processed to stop the enzymatic reactions, which is another video I'll be having coming up real soon, because the enzymes in the food, they could be your best friend or they could be your worst enemy, because enzymes in food can degrade food over time, and that's why they blanch frozen vegetables, because they'll turn brown, and the enzymes in the food, if they didn't blanch them to stop the enzymatic activity, would degrade food, and the nutrition would lower over time during the storage. So at the end of this video, to sum it up, I want to share with you guys my opinions is that, when heat processing your food, you're not going to always lose everything in the food. It's not going to be a worthless food. It can have some value depending on what nutrient you're looking for. Of course, all the studies that I talked about in this episode went over things like minerals, amino acids, aka proteins, vitamins, and more importantly, the plant phytochemicals that are really important to me, as well as, antioxidant activity. And those are many components of the food that are important. Of course, there are other components of food that will be totally devastated with heat processing, such as the life force and as well as the enzymes. So we want to look at things not with like a micro lens, like raw is the best because that's how we ate. Like, there's books on why cooking made us human and how eating starches helped our microbiome to, flourish and grow and help us to be human and have a stronger immune system and all these things. So I want you guys to try to unlimit yourself and maybe think beyond the box. The other thing that I'll mention is that when I eat heat processed foods, I'm not going out to eat and eating just whatever vegan junk food out there. Like, I eat pretty much plain heat processed foods. You know, I'll cook beans and I basically cook them in the Instant Pot. I use the Instant Pot because it's just easier, quicker, and my stove is disconnected. And it's just convenient. I set it and forget it, walk away, it cooks, I come back and it's done. I get to open it up and eat it. Like, I don't salt the food, I don't add anything to it, so it's pretty bland. I'm not gonna say like, oh, I want to eat a bowl of beans instead of like some juicy persimmons. I'd rather eat the persimmons. So, you know, this keeps me in check so that I don't eat a lot of heat processed foods. As a matter of fact, I have some steamed yams that I heat processed, and actually I'm just really not even enjoying eating them. I'm like, oh man, I gotta eat more of those yams that I cooked and cooled that are in my fridge waiting for me. And of course I'd really love to eat persimmons more, but I'm like, I gotta eat those yams because of the purple anthocyanins, as well as a resistant starch for my microbiome. So hopefully next microbiome test that I do, it can be even better than the previous one, because, you know, once again, I'm doing this for my health, not for any kind of dogma. And once again, you know, I drink a lot of juices to get a lot of my nutrients that way, but also I'm not going to say that like cooked food is bad. You know, I'm going to say yes, there's plenty of ways to cook your food that are actually quite bad. It can be quite addictive depending on how you process it, if you add salt and, you know, the recipes you're making. I'm just kind of eating it kind of like pretty mono, like keeping it simple so that I'm not going to just overdose on cooked foods, because in many cases it doesn't like taste super good, but I know I want to eat it, and it also does help me out to balance out my calories, to spread my calorie load instead of getting most of my calories from fruit, which is what I used to do, which then I believe affected my microbiome in a certain way. I'm able to eat a little bit of fruit, lots of vegetables, and some beans and other cooked grains, as well as things like starchy foods like sweet potatoes, purple sweet potatoes specifically. I barely buy orange sweet potatoes, you know, for their health, myriad of health benefits. So after watching this video, I hope you guys include more fresh fruits and vegetables in your diet. You know, once again, juiced, vacuum blended, or just chewed up with your teeth is great. If you're super hardcore eating a lot of fruit and the fruit's not agreeing with you, like you're getting, you know, blood sugar rushes after you eat fruit, then maybe it's a good time to start maybe even heat processing some starches or vegetables or beans or grains. Even if you just want to move into eating some oatmeal, that's just overnight oats, just soaked, so you don't have to heat process them. You know, I find eating oatmeal in the morning has been something really good for me, because I actually won't be hungry for several hours. I'm going to be making a video on how I do my overnight oats in 4 hours and how to make it like really microbiome rich, you know, with prebiotic fibers that keeps me satisfied for hours. So anyways, if you guys enjoyed this episode, hey, please be sure to give this video a big thumbs up. Be sure to share this also with somebody else on a raw foods diet path that you guys believe it could help, because they may believe also some of the raw food dogma that's out there that I'm here to just dispel and share with you guys my personal thoughts on this, as well as some of the science like I did today. Also, be sure to click that subscribe button right down below. Make sure you click the little bell so you get notified as many videos come out. I have them coming out every 5 to 7 days. You never know where I'll show up or what you'll be learning on my YouTube channel. And finally, be sure to check my past episodes. The past episodes are a wealth of knowledge. I'll put links down below to some of the videos I've done on the whiteboard, on the resistant starch, as well as the microbiome, and some of the ways that I heat process my food and the specific foods that I cook. If you guys are interested in learning about some of the healthiest cooked foods you guys can eat. So with that, my name is John Kohler with OKRaw.com. We'll see you next time, and until then, remember, keep eating your fresh fruits and vegetables. They're always the best.